death is the great equalizer. Death shows no partiality, makes no distinction between rich or poor, between great and small. Everyone, without exception, is subject to bodily death. And this confronting reality forces us to contend with our mortality. And we see in all the religions of the world an attempt to grasp and grapple with this great mystery of our mortality. And interestingly, there is common to almost all the religions of the world an intuitive sense of an afterlife, of a life beyond this world. And of course, with the advent of the Enlightenment, there developed this new idea, which was that there is only this world, that there is only the material realm that we see around us, and that there is no afterlife, there is no soul. So for the position of this kind of materialistic positivism professed by the atheist, death equates to annihilation, and therefore both death and life are rendered in a sense meaningless and hopeless. There's a sense of futility to everything, since this is the only life that there is. However, for those of us with faith, we do not believe that this material realm is the only dimension of existence. God is being itself, the source of all being. Everything that has existence shares in and is sustained by his primordial existence. In the Creed, we pray that God created all things, visible and invisible. The angelic hosts of heaven, and indeed the fallen angels in hell, are among those spiritual realities which have no material bodily existence. But we also believe that God created each of us with a spiritual soul, joined mysteriously to our mortal bodies. Because the soul is spiritual, it is also eternal and imperishable. And so when we die, the body perishes, but our souls continue to exist, awaiting the day of the resurrection, when we will be given a share and a glorious body like our Lord's own glorified body. And I suppose this is the difference between these miracles of resuscitation, if you like, that we see in the Gospels, such as the widow, the son of the widow of Nain. We could add to him those two other accounts in the Scriptures, the raising of Lazarus, the brother of Mary and Martha, and also the raising of Jairus' daughter. Each of these three accounts in the Gospels of the dead being restored to life. But we know that it was only a temporary restoration, that they too, in the fullness of time, would also have died a natural death at the end of their lives. Whereas the resurrection of our Lord is of an entirely different order. He is given a glorified body, which will endure for all eternity in heaven. And we too await the day of the resurrection, when we will be given a glorified and imperishable body that will be much like our soul. And so, Christian faith instructs us that death does not mean annihilation, the annihilation of the atheist, but rather a new kind of existence as we await the restoration of our bodies at the general resurrection at the end of time. Our Lord speaks of this resurrection of the dead very plainly in the Gospel, and it's spoken of at length in the epistles of St. Paul, particularly in 1 Corinthians, who describes the raising of the dead at the last trumpet. Prior to the final resurrection of the dead, the souls of the departed are prepared for their eternal destiny, either with God in heaven or deprived of God in hell. So we must be warned that that there is no room for fences. There is one of two ultimate destinies for every human person: eternal happiness or eternal misery and damnation. Even so, most of the souls of even good and virtuous Christians are not ready to enter into the beatific vision of God at the moment of their death. To be admitted in the presence of God who is all perfection cannot admit of imperfection. And so every soul, even the souls of very, very good and virtuous people, need to be purified of every last vestige of attachment to sin. And so we have the doctrine of purgatory. Many Catholics today have all but forgotten about the existence of purgatory, and I suspect most Catholics under the age of about 40 or 50 have quite possibly never even really heard the doctrine of purgatory, certainly don't understand what it is. Some might be tempted to see purgatory as a kind of a medieval myth that's long been abandoned, or we might dismiss it on the grounds that God wouldn't want to punish anybody. God of love and mercy who makes no demands upon us. In spite of the Church's failing to preach about the existence of purgatory, we can have no doubts. It remains very much a part of the Catholic doctrine. Belief in purgatory is borne out in the ongoing practice of praying for the dead, and indeed of having masses offered for the intention of the repose of their souls, as we are doing in this Mass, praying for the repose of all the souls who are awaiting their final admittance into heaven. And purgatory is absolutely necessary if we are to pray for souls, because logically speaking, if there is no purgatory, then at the moment of death, the souls are either damned, in which case our prayers avail them nothing, or they're in heaven already, in which case they don't need our prayers. The very fact that the Church has, right from the very earliest days of the Church, had the practice of praying for the souls of the faithful departed is a sign of the implicit understanding of purgatory and the fact that souls do indeed benefit from our prayers. What do we know about purgatory? Given that it is a spiritual reality, we will always fall short of fully understanding the state. But even so, we can discern certain aspects of purgatory. The first thing to note is that it is extremely painful. In some of the devotional literature, it said that a moment in purgatory is more excruciating than all the physical sufferings of this world. We might wonder how that is so. Well, because the soul in purgatory is able to experience in a very direct way the effects of their sinfulness. Whereas, I suppose in this world, our souls are largely held to the effects of our sins. We don't necessarily, when we commit a sin, we don't necessarily feel in our soul, especially if we have a deadened conscience, the full pain and suffering of the effect of that sin. Whereas in purgatory, the soul is restored to a perfect state of sensitivity, to an awareness of the full horror of sin. And so this suffering is acute precisely because it is an intensely spiritual suffering. The greatest anguish of the souls in purgatory is that perfect awareness of how the sins of our life offend God. God's justice demands an exacting account of the graces that we have lost and the full impact of the rebellion which our sins have had in opposing God's plan. These sins must atone for, and our wounded nature healed by this painful but necessary medicine. In spite of their agony, the souls in purgatory would not wish to be spared God's justice, because they understand with perfect clarity that without its purification they would not be able to enter into the presence of God. Before entering heaven, the soul must be perfectly purified from every attachment to sin, and experience a just expiation for the temporal punishment also due to sin. Therefore, the saints warn us that there are an extremely small number of saints who go directly to heaven without passing through purgatory first. We must not only live in a state of grace, but also strive to undertake prayer and penances for our sins and those of the holy souls. Otherwise, we can expect to pay back debt in purgatory. Lastly, we note that purgatory is only a passing state. It is not an eternal one. All the souls in purgatory who suffer the just punishment for the temporal effects of their sins will eventually enter heaven. The certainty of salvation must be a considerable source of consolation for the holy souls in the midst of their anguish. This doctrine of purgatory, far from being a horrible or a frightening teaching, ought to be a source of great consolation and hope for us. Because the existence of purgatory means that we can hope that even those who were less than perfect saints, might not be excluded from heaven. Purgatory is that refining fire of divine justice that prepares us to experience the ecstatic fire of divine love. Even so, our belief in purgatory reminds us of our obligation to pray for the deceased. Praying for the dead is listed among the 7 spiritual works of mercy. To neglect the agony of the souls in purgatory is a grave omission, no less serious than the failure to alleviate the sufferings of the poor, the hungry, the sick and so on. There are, of course, numerous partial and plenary indulgences which we are able to obtain and offer up for the holy souls in purgatory, among them being the public recitation of the Rosary. A plenary indulgence, which is applicable only for the souls in purgatory, is also granted when the faithful piously visit a church on this day, for All Souls' Day. In visiting the church, it is required that one Our Father and the Creed be recited. And therefore, your attendance at this Mass fulfills the requirement of the basic requirements of the plenary indulgence under normal conditions: prayers for the Holy Father, confession, and reception of Holy Communion and detachment from sin. A partial indulgence, again applicable to the souls in purgatory, can be obtained when the prayer, eternal rest granted unto them, which we sure all know, is prayed. And this can be prayed all the year round. Indeed, it's worth noting that while we take this opportunity in November, especially to pray for the souls of the dead, and on today especially, of All Souls' Day, that this is something that we should do regularly. I know in my family growing up, we would pray by name for all the deceased members of our family, our grandparents, the great aunts and uncles. We have a whole litany of people that we pray for the repose of their souls. So it's a great thing to do, to be able to teach our children this great practice of praying for the souls of the faithful departed. Eternal rest granted unto them, O Lord.